Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings from EJSLLC.com. This video is going to be another in my RHCE practice session series where I'm preparing for the Red Hat Certified Engineer exam. Before I dive in, I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video, as well as invite everyone, if you're watching and you haven't subscribed yet, to click the subscribe button and ring the bell when you do so you can be notified of when new content comes available. Also, if you enjoy the content of this video or find it useful, make sure you click that like button and feel free to share this with anyone else that might also enjoy it or find it useful. In this video, I'm going to continue with the Create Ansible Plays and Playbooks objective group, and we'll be looking at Configure Error Handling. I do want to remind you that this is not intended to be authoritative information, nor is this intended to be a tutorial. Rather, it's an opportunity for me to go over the objective at hand, try to talk about it, try to do some examples using it, in hopes of being prepared for tasks that involve that objective for the RHCE. Ideally, at the end of the video, I'll feel pretty confident about the objective. Otherwise, I'll note it down that I need to spend some time on this between now and the exam, which is about 2.5 weeks or so away. That being said, I do intend for the information to be as accurate as possible, and feel free to leave comments if I happen to get something incorrect. I'm sure both viewers watching and reading the comments as well as myself would enjoy getting the correct information. All right, so diving in, error handling. I'm trying to think of the best way to practice and talk about this. Well, probably the best way is just make some examples. So let's take a look at what happens when an error occurs with a playbook. So we're going to create a little playbook. Actually, I'm going to remove one that I was working on before. And we're going to make error test.yml. All right, and I'm going to, let's see, we'll name this testing error behavior. And we'll run this against all of the hosts, or hosts all. We don't need to become for this. And let's do tasks plural, name, and we're just going to create a file. So we'll use the, well, actually, no, that's not going to work the way I want. We're going to make a line in a file. So we'll use the line and file module for this. And the path is going to be temp test file. We'll do test files plural. And the line is going to be just, this is a line. State's going to be present. Actually, let's call it just test file because I think I might have that on a couple of servers already. All right, so Ansible playbook, error test, and let's see what happens here. So we gather our facts. All right, so that failed on each of these. That particular file does not exist, therefore line and file is not going to be able to do anything with it. Now, you would expect that, right? So let's go back in and let's add something after this, so another task. And we'll just use debug for this, show a message. Here's a message. So the way Ansible works is once it encounters an error or a failure with a task, then that play comes to an end. As you can see, we have the errors again with line and file, and it did not fire off the debug message. Now, if I have multiple plays in the playbook, it should go on to the next play. So let's try that just to make sure that it happens. I'm fairly certain that it will. All right. I'm going to get rid of these extra spaces here. So we'll make a new play. We're just going to call it second play. We'll keep doing this against all the hosts, even though I'm just going to do a little debug message. Show a message, debug, and its message. Here's another message. All right, so let's run this playbook now, or this newly edited playbook. So what should happen is it's going to fail that task. So it stopped completely. I was expecting that to go into the next play. As I know that there's something that we can set, and I was actually going to demonstrate this, and it's called any errors fatal. And with any errors fatal, it would, well, maybe I need to say any errors fatal no with that, and then it wouldn't go into the next play. That is kind of weird. All right, so just to make sure I have stuff configured right. Well, no, name play hosts, all that's right. Well, let's try this. Beauty of practice sessions, not everything will go as planned. So any errors, fatal, false. Let's see if that changes the outcome. Nope, that didn't change the outcome. That's kind of weird. That's not what I was expecting to have happen. So clearly I need to take a look at the actual function of any errors fatal prior to doing the exam. I thought what that did was allowed the next play to do its thing, even though you had a failure in an earlier play. But I must have been incorrect about that. All right, so one thing we can do, let's say that this particular task is something that if it fails, we don't need to fail the entire play. Off the top of my head, I can't think of an example just on the spot, but let's say that that's our scenario. There's a couple of ways we can handle this. In the task itself, we can add the ignore errors and say true or yes for that. True is not going to work, but true will. So what should happen, famous last words in IT, should, right, is that it's going to say we're skipping that task and moving on. And then it went ahead and did our second play, which we definitely expected that. Notice how it still failed, but it says it's ignoring that failure and we're moving on to the next thing. Man, that any errors fatal, that really bothers me. Oh well, I'll definitely have to look that up, and I suggest if you're doing your own studies for RHCE, you know how that functions as well, because it strikes me as one of those things that you probably would have on your exam, like one of the little gotchas that might be a little minutia thing that may or may not be available in built-in documentation. So maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. There's no way for me to know, and even if I did, I couldn't tell you because of NDA. But the point of this exercise just now is showing you what the ignore errors can do. Now, another thing that you can do for errors is something called a block statement. Or maybe it's not specifically for error handling, but rather like just control over your playbook as far as how it works. So we'll go back into error test and let's do this. So we are getting rid of ignore errors, but what we're going to do is within this task, we're going to create a block. And blocks are going to have three parts to them. One part is the actual task that you want to run. And this can be more than one task, but for this example, we're just going to do a single task. The task that you want to run. Then you can also include a rescue section. And the way rescue works is if a task fails, the rescue section is going to run. And then you can have an always section to where regardless of if the task in the block fails, then the always action is going to occur. So this will be at a new indentation. So we'll give it name, line, and file. Oops, I want to give that name, line, and file rather. Name is going to be try the line and file. And since we're doing another level of indentation, we have to move our parameters over. All right, we're going to create rescue. So if this error is out, this is going to run. So I'm just going to have rescue. I'm going to call that show what happened. And we'll do debug, message, line in file failed. And we're not going to do an always just yet. And I'm actually going to get rid of our second play and other message here. Okay, so let's run our playbook. All right, so the try line and file failed, but the task that was in the rescue block still ran. And so the idea behind this, if you're working with your playbook and you have some condition like if something fails, go ahead and do this other thing, this is where it would come into play. In case in point, to kind of turn this into a more practical example, we'll do VI error test. So let's say that we do this. So name, create the file. We'll use the file module. So path will be temp, test file, state will be touch. Need to put my colon there for path. And so what's going to happen this time is that line of file is going to fail. It's going to kick off the rescue block. So let's make sure that that does what we expect it to do. All right, and now if we run this playbook again, then the task itself should not fail, and as a result, the rescue block is not going to run. And see, the try line and file ran, but if we were to cat our playbook here, we see that the rescue block of create the name of the task, the create the file, that task did not fire off. Now you might be in a situation where you have something that you want to always run in the block, even if there's a failure. To be able to make that happen, we will have an always. And notice where this is indentation wise. This is still in the same, this always is in the same indentation as block, which is in the same indentation as the original task. Then we can give always a name, run this regardless, debug, message, this is the always block. All right, so let us clear our screen. We'll run the playbook again. So the result should be similar, except we're going to have that always block run this time. And there it is. Now, one thing I'm curious about, let's go back into error test. I wonder if we can use a when statement just for the always block. So what I'm going to do here is create a variable with register. We're going to just call it result, or results plural. And I'm going to add a when. And what I'm going to do is results dot RC, which is return code, we'll do does not equal 0. So if this return code is 0, it should be a success, and see if the always still runs with this. Okay, so let's see here. Unsupported parameters for line and oh, I must have misspelled register. And then error with the, yeah, that's probably what I did. That's what I've found myself doing. Well, I had that at the wrong point of indentation. Okay, so let's fix that and let's try it again. Because now we're going to have a variable, and this should, again, famous last words in IT, work. So Ansible playbook, error test. All right, so the conditional check failed. I wonder why that failed. Let's see. Error evaluating results RC. Dict object has no attribute for RC. Well, now I'm curious. So let's do this. We're going to add a var parameter, and we're just going to look at what we have in results. So Ansible playbook, error test. Okay, so this, I guess we're only going to have return code if we're doing things like command and shell, which I suppose that makes sense. So just for the sake of argument, let's see, failed, false. We can do this. So we'll use the failed attribute for that. So error test. And what we're going to do here is add a line when results failed, and we're going to say when that equals, we're going to try to put this in quotes. Something tells me that quotes are not going to be right for that because it's a Boolean versus a string. Well, let's try it without quotes first. So if failed equals true, then let's see if always runs here. Ah, okay, good. So that tells us that even though it's in a run, I mean the task, it's like the task ran because it checked the evaluator, right? But it was skipped because of the when statement. Now, one other thing I want to try is maybe have rescue with a when just to see what happens here. So we're going to change this to test files. So we know that's not there. We are going to get rid of our always block, and we're going to add a when statement to rescue. And I'm not sure if you would actually do this in production, but I'm genuinely just curious at this point. That's something I encourage you to do with your own studies. I mean, don't spend hours and hours going off on the deep end of something, but sometimes you get an idea of how things will work. Okay, cool. So so again, the rescue block ran, but it skipped the task. So you can use when statements for that. And I know you can use a when statement for the entire block itself. It does not have to be for the individual tasks that are within it. I guess one other thing I could probably try is putting our when statement at the level of rescue. I want to try that real quick just to see if when can function there. All right, make sure I'm right with my indentation. Yes. So it kind of makes sense. You can use when with individual tasks, but I wonder if it'll work with I guess it does. Or did it? What's it complaining about? Conditional check results failed, false. I wasn't expecting that there. Oh, results. Okay, that would make sense. Results is undefined because, okay, well, I think the example I'm doing is kind of silly anyway. Probably not, worth much there. But it is curious that since this failed, it did not register results, or did it? I guess it didn't. Okay, so we talked about block. We talked about ignore errors. One thing to take note of is how plays work with handlers if you have an error that occurs. So we're going to rename this to testing handler behavior. As we know, handlers are only going to run once when they're called. Perhaps you have multiple tasks that will call a handler, and in that case, your handler will still run only once. We also know that handlers, or if you don't know, now you know, handlers run at the end of your play after all of your tasks and such. So if your play encounters a failure or an error, even if the handler has been called, it's not going to run. So let's going to do proof positive of that here. And what we're going to do is we're going to copy a file here. Use the copy module. Content, hello Ansible, destination, temp, hello. Should be all that we need for the copy module. Content and destination. Normally you would have source and destination. So, and we're going to notify, call the handler. And now let's do another one. We won't use line of file. Let's use the start Apache. I know that Apache is not installed on these servers. So we'll do services. No, not services, just service. Name, HTTPD, state started. All right, so we got that. Now we'll call or define our handlers and call the handler. We'll just do a debug module and a message. Okay, so we'll run our playbook and let's see what happens. So we successfully copied a file and starting Apache, and the handler did not run. It says running handler, call the handler, but even though it was called, it didn't actually run because of that failure of start Apache. Now let's go back, and there is a way that we can work with this. Now, first of all, I'm going to add something to our copy module, and what I'm going to add is something called changed when. This is an attribute that, if true, then whatever your module does is going to consider that in a change state. Because remember, we in Ansible, we basically have, if you run something, you're either going to get OK, you're going to get changed, or you're going to get a failure. And so changed when, if this is true, then it'll be set to change. So I'm actually going to set this to false. And I believe doing that will make this not be considered changed. So let's put that to the test real quick. Okay, yeah, so that makes it, or it did exactly what I told it to do, or so I think. VI error test. I hate when I get confused on something. Of course, changed when false, because that's not going to be a change. We're going to change it to true. Now, you can also do a statement, variable equals whatever. You would use this a lot of times if you're running command or shell, and even though, like, if you were to do like the date command, and it's going to return something that will be a change. So what you can do with your changed when is set this to where if the return code is something that's not 0, consider it changed or something like that. But I am going to say, yeah, I'm going to say true, which basically means it's always going to be considered changed. Let's run the playbook again. All right, so it changed to change, and we got the behavior we wanted. So there's a couple of ways of handling this. Let's say that even though this start Apache task failed, we still want to call, or we still want to run the handler for whatever that initial task did. So there's two ways to do this. One is we could tell the start Apache task to ignore errors. Another way is to go into our playbook, and we will add in the play section force handlers true. And so what should occur is we'll get changed again for that first, because I've basically set it to where it's always going to be considered changed. The second task is going to fail, but the handler is still going to run. And you can see it ran the handler, and we have our I am the handler message. A couple other things I want to show you about being able to control what happens with errors. Just as you have changed when, you can also have a failed when as well. And this will probably be useful more with some of your command module and shell module, such as, let's do this. So we're going to get rid of our handlers. Don't need that anymore. We're going to get rid of starting Apache. And so we are going to run the command module. And let's see, we're going to cat temp hello. And what we're going to do here is register the results to results. And then we're going to say failed when results standard out. Let's see, so it has hello Ansible. So we're going to say failed when Ansible not in results std out. I believe that will work. I think in a previous video I was using like is not in, but that was incorrect. Is for is defined or is not defined, but in you would not do that. So let's see if this works. All right, so it didn't like my syntax. Let's see. Easy to fix. Result in standard out. I thought not end would be not find expected key. Okay. Well, let's do, first of all, let's verify what our variable is actually going to return. So let's get rid of our failed when. And we're going to add a little debug var results. Unfortunately for operators, I don't know of any built-in documentation that actually has any hints about operators. That'll be something that you'd want to have memorized, which obviously I'll need to do that. All right, so standard out. You know, maybe that would be, maybe I have to use in with a list. I bet that's what it is. Let's try this once again. Maybe I just made a syntax error there. So register results, and we're going to do failed when. It should be, let's do this, Ansible not in results std out. Probably going to give me the same thing, as I think I just did the exact same syntax, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, it's complaining. All right, so let's do this. Let's go back into our error test playbook, and we're going to be able to practice with another little module real quick. I really want to show off how that failed when works, so I want to get this to work for you. So we're going to change file contents, line in file, and I think it's is it regex or regxp? So regxp. All right, so go back to our error test. So regxp, and we're going to say begins with hello, state present, and we're going to replace it. And this is going to replace the entire line with the word Ansible. And this is going to be display. I think I need to have path as well. Or do I need to have source? So attributes. Oh, I got that off. So Ansible doc -s line in file. Pretty sure I have to have path. Yeah. I think just a bit of the nerves of making mistakes are getting to me because I'm forgetting easy things like that. Temp, hello. Okay. And we're going to get rid of failed when and the results there. So let's see if this works here. And of course it doesn't give us the actual thing. So let's do this. Ansible all a cat temp hello. This should be all that we need, and it should give us what we want. Okay, so the word Ansible is there. So let's try this failed when again. So error test, we will do register results, failed when, we'll do results, std out does not equal Ansible. So let's see what happens here. Okay, and obviously the results were Ansible, so that did its thing. And so now let's change this to failed when standard out equals Ansible. And let's see what happens. All right, and we have our failed when result has done what we want. And so where this again would be useful is, let's say that you do have something that's like catting what a file should be, and if a particular line comes up, then you can use your failed when with that, because otherwise just the sheer act of catting the file from an Ansible perspective, that was successful. It might not have the data that you want with it, hence why we would use failed when with this, but otherwise it is successful. The last thing I want to show you is the fail module, and this can be useful in the fact that you can basically give yourself a customized error message. So let's do this. So we're going to use line and file again. Actually, no, we'll do the starting Apache, and we're going to combine this with a block. So start a service. We'll start our block. And what we're going to do here is we'll just do the service module, and then a little too far for that. Name HTTPD, state started with rescue. Actually, we'll add a little bit of logic to this. So rescue, so if this fails, we're going to have it give us a particular error message. So we're going to do the fail module. Apache didn't start. I guess we can do when results failed equals true. So let's try this out and see what happens. Oh, of course I would have a syntax error. That should fix that. All right, and we see that the fail task ran, and it gave us this particular message of Apache didn't start. So now let's make one change here just to show that the results failed was a legitimate thing. This should skip that task. Yep. So the fail module can be particularly useful, like if you need to have that that customized error message. So in this, went through a decent bit as far as error handling. I think I'm probably ready to tackle some of this on the exam. There are some particulars that I would want to look back up again. The any errors fatal piece for playbooks would be one of them, because I'm fairly sure that playbooks or plays would continue even if there was an error and then you use that particular attribute to change that. But obviously for whatever it is I'm doing here, I was incorrect about that. As far as using blocks to be able to handle stuff, I think I'm pretty well versed on that. And the failed when, changed when, and fail module, I feel confident with those. I do need to still review all of my operators, because clearly I'm not using the in and not in operators correctly. Hopefully, though, you did find this useful, and for your own studies, as I went through some of these and had some challenges, perhaps my method of thinking stuff through might be helpful for you with your studies. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you do click like and feel free to share it with others. Thanks again to returning subscribers for watching another video, and remember, if you haven't subscribed, make sure you do click that subscribe button and ring the bell. Thanks again for taking the time to watch, and I'll see you the next time.